You start?
Yes. Good morning. Bonjour, tout le monde.
Good morning, everybody.
Dear participants, thank you all for connecting. And before we begin, I'd just like to make a few logistical announcements for the meeting. Firstly, concerning interpretation. The debates will be interpreted in English and French, which are the working languages of the committee. And at the bottom of your screen, you can find the button to select the interpretation language. We are working on the Zoom platform, and in order to take the floor, you will need to connect to the session using an active meeting link. If you require an active meeting link, please register through the web page indicated on the screens, as you can see now on the screens. And in case of any technical problems, please write to the Secretariat at ichmeetings@unesco.org. That's ichmeetings@unesco.org. Please also be advised that the debates of the meeting will be transmitted by webcast in real time through the web page of the convention. I think we are now ready to start, and we have the honor of having the ADG of the culture sector with us, Mr. Ernesto Otone. Please.
Thank you, team. Welcome to all. So I would like to extend a warm welcome to members of the committee, state parties of the convention, and observers connecting from around the world. I'm aware that it is a very busy period for all of us. Under the 2003 convention, a series of statutory meetings have been taking place. This is already the 11th statutory meeting of this year. And in this demanding context, I'm grateful for your dedication and commitment. This extraordinary session was convened at the request of the committee at its 16th session at the end of last year to discuss the results of Part 3 meeting of the Open-Ended Intergovernmental Working Group held on 25th, 26th April 2022 in the framework of the global reflection on the listing mechanism. The recommendations of the working group are being presented to the committee in the form of revisions of the operational directives. With the endorsement to the committee, this proposed revision will be presented to the 9th session of the General Assembly that begins next week. The global reflection took place in 3 parts, the Part 1 and Part 2 meetings of the Open-Ended Working Group took place in July and September last year. They dealt with the priority topics identified by the governing bodies of the Convention. The recommendation of Part 1 and Part 2 meetings were presented in the form of the proposed revision to the operational directives. They were endorsed by the 16th session of the committee at the end of last year. The Part 3 meeting of the Open-Ended Working Group took place in April this year. The working group discussed issues related to the annual number of files and related aspects, such as the composition and working methods of the evaluation body, as well as other technical matters. We are meeting in this 5th extraordinary session of the committee in order to approve the recommendation of the Part 3 meeting of the working group, once again in the form of the proposed revision to the operational directives. Next week, the 9th session of the General Assembly, which will be held from 5th to 7th July, will approve the revisions to the operational directives, as endorsed by both the 16th session of the committee and this 5th extraordinary session of the committee. This will cover the recommendation of all 3 parts of the working group. This is a real achievement, as the approval will conclude the global reflection, which has been ambitious in its scope and technically very complicated. I'm aware that a great deal of work has gone into the preparation of the proposed revision to the operational directives that you will be examining today. First and foremost, allow me to recognize the efforts of the working group, who prepared the recommendations through its Part 3 meeting. A special thanks must go to the chairperson of the working group, the Ambassador Oike from Japan, whose able leadership made it possible for the working group to conclude its work. I would like to take this opportunity to especially thank the government of Japan for their financial support throughout the whole reflection process. Ladies and gentlemen, I would also like to draw your attention to the additional item on our agenda. This relates to the request made by Ukraine on 21st April this year to examine as soon as possible the nomination culture of Ukrainian borscht cooking as a case of extreme urgency in reference to Article 17.3 of the Convention. This is the first time in the history of the Convention that we will be applying this provision. Following the proposal of the Bureau at its meeting on 23rd June, which considered the recommendation of the evaluation body and the subsequent electronic exchange with committee members, the provisional agenda of this extraordinary session was revised on 28 June to include the request by Ukraine. Dear committee members, I would like to underline the speed at which we were able to process these requests. Thanks to the efforts of all those involved, we were able to ensure the treatment of the request by Ukraine within 10 weeks of its submission. This reflects the potential of the 2003 Convention mechanism to be flexible in response to situations of extreme urgency. With this in mind, I wish you all a fruitful deliberation and thanks to all. Okay, now we move on item 2, election of the Bureau. Dear members of the committee, we need to elect the Bureau for this extraordinary session. Please refer to document 2. In the case of an extraordinary session, the committee shall elect a chairperson, one or more vice chairperson, and a rapporteur who shall remain in office until the end of that session, pursuant to Rule 13.2 of the Rules of Procedures of the committee. Following the practice used in almost all of the past extraordinary session, I understand that there is a general agreement to ask the Bureau of the 17th session of the committee to serve as the Bureau of this extraordinary session. This means the chairperson will be Her Excellency the Ambassador of Morocco, Monsieur Samir Adare, and vice chairperson will be ensured by Switzerland, Czechia, Panama, Republic of Korea, and Botswana. Your rapporteur will be Mr. Ramiro Maurice Silva Rivera from Peru. Does anyone have any objection on this proposal? I see none, so we can adopt by acclamation. So we're going to wait 2 or 3 minutes because I was informed that the ambassador of Morocco is in the building. So we're going to wait 2 minutes. We will ask. He's on way. So we're going to wait 2 minutes and we will ask him to take his place in the podium. Thank you. Thank you for your patience, and we have with us the chairperson, Monsieur Samir Adare, to has taken his place. Thank you so much. Congratulations, Mr. Chairperson.
Merci.
Thank you, dear ADG, dear Secretary, ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, dear friends. I would like to first warmly thank you, dear members of the committee, for entrusting me with the important task of chairing this 5th extraordinary session. I am extremely honoured by that, and I will do all my best so that our meeting unfolds as smoothly as possible. Dear members of the Bureau, congratulations and welcome. I am delighted to work alongside you, with all of you today. Congratulations to all of you. Without further ado, let's move on to the decision. Please refer to document 2, LHE/22/5.ex.com/2, and the draft decision in paragraph 3 as projected on your screens.
Merci.
Thank you. May I ask the committee to adopt this draft decision as we see it on the screen? Provided there are no objections. Seeing none, I declare decision 5.ex.com2 adopted, as there are no objections. Thank you very much.
So let's move to item 3, which is about the adoption of the agenda. Please refer to document 3, LHE/22/5.ext.com/3.rev. Mr. Secretary, the floor is yours to present this item to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. So there are two main items on the provisional agenda of today's extraordinary session. They are item 4 and item 5. So concerning item 4, the extraordinary session was convened by the 16th session of the committee through its decision 16-COM14, and the purpose is to discuss the results of the Part 3 meeting of the open-ended Intergovernmental Working Group within the framework of the global reflection on the listing mechanisms of the Convention. This corresponds, again, as I said, to item 4 of the provisional agenda. As was mentioned also by the Assistant Director General in his opening remarks, an additional item was added on 28th of June regarding the request by Ukraine to examine the nomination culture of Ukrainian borscht cooking as a case of extreme urgency. And this corresponds to item 5 of the provisional agenda. While I'll present the details of this second case when we come to item 5, The inclusion of the request by Ukraine as a new agenda item followed the electronic exchange with the committee that was initiated by the Bureau of the 17th session of the committee and with reference to Rule 2.2 of the Rules of Procedure of the committee. The electronic exchange sought the agreement of at least 2/3 of the committee members to include the item on this request in the 5th extraordinary session of the committee as proposed by the Bureau. And since the agreement from 2/3 of the members was obtained, the Secretariat has revised the provisional agenda of today's session accordingly and published the corresponding working document on 28th of June 2022. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I now open the floor. Does anybody wish to take the floor? I see no request for the floor. So let us move now to the decision. Please refer to document LHE/22/5.ext.com/3 and its draft decision in paragraph 4. Can we see it on the screen? Yes. Can you scroll it? Yeah. Thank you. May I ask the committee to adopt draft decision as shown on the screens? Seeing no objections, I therefore declare decision 5.ext.com3 as adopted. Thank you. Dear members of the committee, dear colleagues, we can move on now to the next item, which concerns one of the core issues bringing us together today. This concerns the global reflection on the listing mechanisms of the 2003 Convention, and in particular, the results of the Part 3 meeting of the open-ended Intergovernmental Working Group, which met in April this year. I have the pleasure to welcome the chairperson of the working group, Ambassador and Permanent Delegate of Japan to UNESCO, Mr. Atsuyuki Oike, to join us on the podium. Welcome, Ambassador. Thank you, Excellency. May I ask you to give a report on the working group to the committee? The floor is yours, Excellency. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Ambassador Samio. Dear colleagues, it has been an honor to be entrusted with the chairmanship of the open-ended Intergovernmental Working Group in the framework of the global reflection on the listing mechanisms of the 2003 Convention. Allow me to first summarize the process with which the global reflection took place. The 13th session of the committee in 2018 launched the global reflection on the listing mechanisms of the convention and established the open-ended intergovernmental working group to spearhead the reflection. The Part 1 meeting of the working group took place in July 2021, followed by the Part 2 meeting in September 2021. The recommendations of these two parts were endorsed by the 16th session of the committee in December 2021 in the form of draft amendments to the operational directives. While the Part 1 and Part 2 meetings of the working group successfully addressed the priority reflection topics, the 16th session of the committee also requested the working group to take on additional issues by extending its mandate. Part 3 meeting of the working group was convened on 25 and 26 of April 2022. The committee is meeting in the extraordinary session today to discuss and endorse the proposed revisions to the operational directives based on the recommendations of the Part 3 meeting of the working group. The proposed revisions of the operational directives related to the recommendations of all three parts will be presented to the 9th session of the General Assembly. This is why it was necessary to convene an extraordinary session before the 9th session of the General Assembly without waiting for the 17th session of the committee at the end of the year. Now allow me turn now specifically to the Part 3 meeting of the working group. The Bureau established for Part 1 and Part 2 of the working group's meeting remained in office until the end of Part 3. I take this opportunity to thank the 5 chairpersons from Germany, Poland, Peru, Cote d'Ivoire, and Kuwait for their great help. Thank you very much. Also, a big thanks go to all the stakeholders involved, including the experts who participated in the earlier consultation in 2021 and the members of the working group. Your commitments and hard work made it possible to accomplish a thorough reflection despite the challenges posed by the pandemic. The Part 3 meeting of the working group was asked to reflect on 9 topics grouped into 2 main categories. Can I ask the Secretariat to display them on the screen? Okay, now we have them on the screen. The first category concerns 5 discussion topics that were ultimately linked to the annual number of files. This included, most importantly, the composition and the working method of the evaluation body. As you can see, there are 5 items there. And now let me move to another category. The second category comprised other issues that required further reflection. They have topics 6, 7, 8, 9, as you probably remember. I'm not going to go through it again, but those are the items that we discussed in the working group. Now, focus was given to topic 1. Can we go back to topic 1? Yes, thank you very much. This is topic 1. This was considered as the main subject of discussion, since many of the other topics were considered as dependent on the outcome of the discussions on topic 1. The working group discussed all 9 topics one by one, as they covered important, rather independent aspects of the listing mechanisms. The part 3 meeting of the working group made 12 recommendations. You can find them in Annex 1 of the document for this item. The document number, I'm sure that you know of this, so I'm not going to repeat the number of the document, but it's in Annex 1. So it's on the screen now. Let me just talk about one by one. The first, the annual ceiling, and then paragraph 1. This is recommendation 1. Recommendation 1 proposed to set up the annual ceiling of the nominations to the urgent safeguarding list, the representative list to the register of good safeguarding practices at no more than 60 dossiers per year, no more than 60 dossiers per year. But this one is related to the third item. Now, recommendation 2 requested that the Bureau of the Committee examine all those requests for international assistance while also setting a limit of $100,000 per request. Now, recommendation 3, paragraph 3, the sustainable staffing requirements of the Secretariat was the subject of recommendation 3. The working group requested the Secretariat to prepare a proposal on the financial and human resources needed for the strengthening the listing mechanism. This proposal shall be submitted for examination by the committee for transmission to the Executive Board of UNESCO and the 10th session of the General Assembly in 2024. By the way, in relation to this particular topic, I would first like to thank the Secretariat on the evaluation body for increasing the number of files up to 60. We highly appreciate their efforts in this regard. But at the same time, there was a strong view expressed in the working group that the number should be even higher. And in this connection, we had extensive discussions on this topic, and we agreed on the language contained in this recommendation. So I would expect that those proposals from the Secretariat are probably coming to the committee meeting at the end of this year for further process ahead. Now, moving on to the next ones, the order of priorities, recommendation 4. The working group also recommended that the current system of priorities to be continued as contained in recommendation 4. Recommendations 5 and 6, the working group proposed that requests regarding transfer from urgent safeguarding list to representative list and requests regarding inscription on an extended or reduced basis are to be considered outside annual ceiling. This relates to recommendation 5 and 6, respectively. By the way, let me draw attention to a particular phrase contained in those paragraphs. This is on an experimental basis. Again, we had considerable discussions on this item, and for now, we agreed that those requests should be outside the annual ceiling. But depending on the future situation, depending on the number of files coming under those categories, we may need to come back to this issue at a later stage. So let me emphasize that this agreement is on an experimental basis. Now, moving on, the working group also proposed that the composition of the evaluation body should remain unchanged, as included in recommendation 7. Now, recommendation 8 proposes that the backlog files older than 4 years are to be removed from the backlog. Again, here we had considerable discussions, and I'm coming back to this issue at a later stage because some delegations wanted me to mention some points in this regard. Now, moving on to recommendation 9, the working group clarified under recommendation 9 that the proposal to revise a priority for the examination of nomination files for state parties that did not fulfill reporting obligations can be considered at a later stage. There has been considerable improvements in the reporting obligations, and therefore this will be a topic for discussion, if necessary, at a later stage. The recommendation 10 also indicates that the possibility of obtaining additional information regarding nomination by using a dialogue process with accredited NGOs has been incorporated in the new initiative on the broader implementation of Article 18 of the Convention. Well, I understand that this initiative is financially supported by the generous contribution of Sweden and is scheduled to be launched in 2023, if I'm not mistaken. Now, the working group proposes under recommendation 11 any exceptional cases that increase the annual ceiling shall be reviewed by the committee after the initial discussion by the Bureau as soon as possible based on agreed criteria. This question of agreed criteria, I'll come back to this point at a later stage. And finally, the working group did not consider that it is necessary to pursue the proposal to introduce preliminary assessment procedures to the existing upstream process as indicated by recommendation 12. Now, let me make a little bit of references to the discussions and special requests for comments from several delegations. During the Part 3 meeting, I was requested by some members of the working group to include 2+1/2 issues, two issues essentially in my report to this extraordinary session of the committee. One issue concerns backlog files, which is dealt with in recommendation 8, while the other relate to the procedure to examine exceptional cases, which is included in recommendation 11. Now, recommendation 8, the topic on backlogs was raised when discussing issues linked to the annual number of files. Files that could not be treated due to the annual ceiling and the priority system are commonly called backlog files and stay in the pipeline of nominations. Long discussions were held on this issue, and the working group's recommendation 8 states that backlog files older than 4 years should be returned to the submitting states. Some delegations expressed their concerns that a few countries with a significant number of backlog files would not be able to have their files withdrawn, submitted again, and be evaluated within 4 years, in the sense of recommendation 8. And therefore, those state parties with many backlog files would be required to update their files a second time. And therefore, it was suggested that the Secretariat open a dialogue with those states to establish a plan for the resubmission of their backlog files. As you can see in our recommendation, those member states with a large backlog are invited to update their files. Now, the second topic that I was asked to report was raised when discussing other issues requiring further reflection. Item 11 of the agenda of Part 3 meeting. It relates to the procedure to examine exceptional cases. Some delegations expressed their wish that discussions take place to identify a group or body to work on establishing the criteria for the definition of exceptional cases in the context of the 2003 Convention. This is reflected in the sentence based on agreed criteria included in the recommendation. And also, I can refer you back to recommendation 11. The last sentence, the working group invites the Secretariat to recommend possible criteria to define exceptional cases. Again, here, there was a very, very long discussion on this one. So I would expect the Secretariat to come up with some suggestions for possible criteria to be discussed in the process ahead. The issue of working group or body is something that we may be able to discuss in the context of the General Assembly. Now, finally, let me just mention one point. This is not really, I was not really asked to include this in my report to the committee. It is rather in my report to the General Assembly. Some delegations were, in the context of future discussions about the new working group to be financed and chaired by Sweden, there was a suggestion that some items discussed in the working group context should be registered in one way or another in the agenda of the future working group on Article 18. Now, the working group that I chair did not have a mandate to do it. So therefore, I have been asked to share that information in my report to the General Assembly. And the purpose essentially is to share this information with the state parties for further discussions in the working group, working group on Article 18 of this convention. So this is probably all that I have been asked to say. Mr. Chair, Ambassador Samir, these are the main points that I wanted to present to the committee this morning. I would be happy to answer any questions about the reflection process that the member states of the committee may wish to raise. Following the request of the working group, the Secretariat has prepared a set of draft amendments to the operational directives based on the recommendations of Part 3 meeting. I understand that the Secretariat is ready to present in detail the proposed amendments to the operational directives. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador and dear friend Oike. Your report gave a good account of the discussions, and I wish to congratulate all the members of the working group who, under your steady guidance, accomplished the challenging task to reflect and make pertinent recommendations to the issues under the reflection. The work that you have achieved collectively will for sure be very important for the future of the convention. Before asking the Secretariat to take us through the proposed revisions to the operational directives, anybody wishes to take the floor, I just wanted to mention that if committee members wish to take the floor, please refrain from discussing the revisions to the operational directives now, as our debate will take place after the Secretariat has explained the revisions. So, is there any questions from the members of the committee? I see no request for the floor. It seems that Ambassador Oike was very, very clear and everything went fine. So, dear colleagues, thank you for sharing there's no point of views, but I would like to turn to the Secretariat to present the proposed amendments to the operational directives to reflect the recommendations of the Part 3 meeting of the working group. Mr. Curtis, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. And as mentioned by the Chairperson of the Open-Ended Working Group, the Secretariat was then tasked with the translation of the recommendations of the Part 3 meeting of the Working Group into the form of proposed amendments to the operational directives. And so I would like to just take a little bit of your time to explain how that is now presented to you. After reviewing all the recommendations, the Secretariat realized that it was really only recommendations 1, 2, 4, and 7 out of the 12 recommendations made by the working group, which actually required revisions to the operational directives. And for this, I'd ask you to refer to Annex 2 of the document 4, which explains it. So the implications of Recommendation 1 are reflected then in the proposed revisions for paragraph 33 of the operational directives to set the annual number of nominations that can be treated at no more than 60, as was explained in that recommendation. And at the same time, the annual sealing of files should be considered in light of the prioritization system, which is established by paragraph 34, and for which amendments are also proposed, because as emphasized by the working group's recommendation 4, it is proposed to formalize what is commonly called the priority 0 category, whereby at least one file per submitting state should be processed every 2-year period. Recommendation 7 of the working group, confirming the composition and working methods of the evaluation body, is reflected in paragraph 27, and according to which the evaluation body is no longer, quote, on an experimental basis as it was done in 2014. Recommendation 2 on moving the examination of international assistance requests to the Bureau of the Committee does, Mr. Chair, require a little bit of explanation. And you will read it you can see it in the document. With the changes proposed by the working group, there are 5 different types of international assistance. And they are explained through the revisions to paragraph 22, 27, 30, 33, 35, and 54 of the operational directives. However, the specific provisions mentioned under recommendation 2 need to be understood to refer to international assistance requests submitted using the form ICH 04. That is to say, international assistance requests up to the amount of $100,000, as well as those for emergency situations. And there will be no more standalone requests for an amount higher than $100,000 that used to be approved by the committee, and they will all be dealt with, all those standalone requests will be dealt with by the Bureau with a cap of $100,000. However, international assistance requests combined with a nomination to the urgent safeguarding list, as well as was established by the working group in its earlier sessions, and the international assistance requests in the context of the transfer of an element from the representative list to the urgent safeguarding list will continue to be examined because they are considered as part of the evaluation of a single file. And that is why it is proposed to leave those 2 specific international assistance requests, those which are combined with the urgent safeguarding list inscription, to the evaluation body to evaluate and for the committee to examine and approve. And emergency assistance and preparatory assistance will continue, as is the case, to be examined and approved by the Bureau. You can see then that the proposed revisions are presented in 2 colors in Annex 2 of Document 4, and that is because the proposals related to the recommendations made by Part 3 meeting of the working group are presented with underlines for new additions and strike-throughs for deletions. Some of these revisions impact the provisions in 2 paragraphs, those are paragraphs 22 and 30, relating to recommendations made by Part 1 and Part 2, and which are already endorsed by the 16th session of the committee, and those are indicated in grey in the annex. In other words, those grey parts of the annex are not meant for discussion by this extraordinary session of the committee because they were already discussed and recommended by the committee at its 16th session last December. Please also allow me to point out that in addition to the revisions that are proposed to be reflected in the operational directives, the working group made recommendations that could be implemented in other ways and do not necessarily need revisions of the operational directives. For instance, recommendation 3 on the staffing requirements of the Secretariat is to be presented to the governing bodies of the Convention and possibly for discussion in the broader UNESCO context. In the same way, recommendation 8 on the removal of files from the backlog does not imply amendments to the operational directives. This is also the case of recommendation 11, which considers that any exceptional case that increased the annual ceiling shall be reviewed by the committee after initial discussions by the Bureau. Furthermore, the working group has invited the Secretariat to recommend possible criteria to define such cases, as was previously mentioned by the chair of the working group. Recommendations 5 and 6 concerning transfers and extensions in relation to the sealing of files, which are still on an experimental basis, can be dealt with through the decisions of the governing bodies, notably the General Assembly and the Committee. And Recommendation 10 concerns the next reflection on good safeguarding in Article 18 of the Convention, and Recommendation 12 is a commentary on the effectiveness of the dialogue process, which in fact has already been incorporated into the operational directives at the last session of the General Assembly. So if this extraordinary session of this committee so recommends, the amendments to the operational directives that correspond to the recommendations made by Part 3 of the working group meeting will be presented to the General Assembly next week, together, of course, with those recommendations by Part 1 and Part 2 of the working group. And that is why they're presented as a package to see the whole package that will go to the General Assembly. But of course, as I said, those in grey are those that have already been discussed by the committee, and the other ones are for the discussion of this extraordinary session relating to Part 3. With that, and I apologize for the rather lengthy explanations, thank you, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Tim, for your detailed presentation. At this stage, let me invite the committee members to express their opinions. Given the complex nature of the proposed amendments, I propose to debate chapter by chapter of the operation directives. We will start with chapter I.7 on the submission of files. We will debate paragraph 22. So I think that Kuwait would like to take the floor, to be followed by Switzerland. The floor is yours, Excellency.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson, and good morning to all our colleagues, committee members, observers, and congratulations for the election of the chairperson. And also let me take this opportunity to thank His Excellency, the Ambassador of Japan, for the constructive, patient, very fruitful discussion that led us to this, the document in front of us. And truly, after looking at it, it reflects what we discussed. Just, to also like to thank the Secretariat for the report. Before we go to the Annex 2, Your Excellency, I know I was looking, the report in paragraph 7B. And I think, that's, reflects what says Mr. Tim reflecting for the international assistant. I just want to, remind our colleagues, in our discussion, and I want to thank them to bring that point, because truly that we did not discuss it or did not mention it, but I think what we see in front of us is should be reflected in the correct manner or in the international assistant. We agreed as a committee member that there is no there's $100,000 cap goes through the bureau for standalone files, but we did not look at whether you have combined files. And what's in front of us, I think that's, the existing, and it should be maintained in the same way, which is, if you have an international assistant within the nomination file, it goes to through the evaluation body, to the committee. So as a Kuwait, we think, this is the correct addition. And we have, I think, this is reflect the discussion and covered all, the items that we discussed. With that, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Now I'd like to give the floor to Switzerland, followed by Czechia. Good morning, Chair. Can you hear me? Yes. I'm trying to switch my camera on, but it doesn't seem to work. So I'm going to speak. I hope you can hear me. Good morning, Chair. It's the first time I'm taking the floor, so I would like to congratulate you as well as all the participating colleagues. I have a few general comments to make. I'm not going to talk about the specific chapters in order, but I won't be long. First of all, I'd like to thank the working group and its chair, as well as the Secretariat, for the work that was carried out on the reflection when it comes to the listing mechanisms.
And of course, I'd also like to thank the government of Japan that supported us on this very important work of reform. So we'd like to commend you for the work that was done by this open-ended working group that managed to put forth constructive and balanced elements for reviewing our procedure. And given its open-ended nature, we believe that the proposals of the working group reflect a very large consensus. Switzerland supports all the proposals and revisions that have been proposed. And we'd also like to call on the committee to do likewise and not to reopen a debate that has already taken place. Adopting the third part of the working group, we now have a solid foundation for our operational directives that we will be able to send as is to the General Assembly. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Madam Ambassador. I agree with your point of view completely, and that of my colleague from Kuwait, His Excellency the Ambassador. I'd also like to thank Ambassador Oike for the exceptional work. And of course, I'd like to thank all of you who took part. This work took almost 2 years. It was a lot of work, which demanded a lot of patience, a lot of discussions, a lot of interactions between you and the presidency. And I think we've reached a result that hopefully will satisfy everyone. But of course, the members of the committee are sovereign and independent in their decisions. And of course, it will be up to them to decide as to the proposals for the reforms that have been put on the table. Now I'd like to give the floor to the Czech Republic, followed by Brazil.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Also, our delegation would like to thank Japan for its generous contribution, the chairperson of the open-ended working group for excellent guidance, and the secretariat and all experts, as well as members of the open-ended working group, for all their work, which has led to finalization of the second part of the revision of the existing listing mechanism. The set of proposed revisions that we are going to endorse today is mostly of practical nature and should further improve the work and results of the convention. We strongly believe that those recommendations which have not been transformed into amendments of the operational directives will also be implemented successfully. We hope that the committee is ready to recommend the draft amendments of the operational directives as they are to the General Assembly, because the debates behind them have been rich and long. All states parties had a chance to discuss them, and they represent a large consensus. So we are happy with the results, and we support the wording of the draft amendments. Thank you.
Merci infiniment, la République.
Thank you very much to the Czech Republic, Brazil, followed by Japan.
And thank you for, and congratulations for your election. Brazil would like to thank the Japanese government for supporting this fundamental reflection for the sustainable development of our convention. We fully support the consensus achieved by the working group on this subject, but would like to stress that in our point of view, the 20th anniversary of our convention calls for substantial reflections that extend beyond the reform of the listing mechanisms in order we can achieve new balances towards the full and equitable implementation of the convention. In our reflection exercise on cultural conventions, the search for new balances, both geographical and thematic, has been a major objective for Brazil. Regarding the 2003 convention, it means, among other things, the strengthening of the register of good safeguarding practices. Much attention has been dedicated to the representative list at the expense of other issues that perhaps could be equally or indeed more urgent to address. Just to give an example, the representative list currently has over than 500 register elements from 135 countries. The rest of good practice contains a relatively small number of inscriptions, 29 belonging to just 26 countries. To sum up our position, we are totally comfortable with the proposals coming from the working group, and we are even more optimistic on the proposals that will probably arise from the forthcoming working group to reflect on a broader implementation of Article 18 of the Convention. Brazil thanks Sweden for the support to this reflection. We hope that in this new working group, we can prioritize strategies to strengthen public awareness about good safeguarding practices as a path to achieve a better balance among the listing mechanisms. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Merci beaucoup, le Brésil, mais nous vous en...
Thank you, Brazil. Thank you for your proposals and your assessment about the developments that this convention should also undertake for the future. Now let me give the floor to Japan, followed by the Netherlands. Japan. Thank you, Chair.
The Secretariat and all the state parties for the effort that has been made to organize the three parts of the open-ended working group. And we are delighted by its constructive outcome. We believe especially that future enforcement of the Secretariat in human resources and financially will strengthen the listing mechanism and therefore encourage community for further protecting their living heritage. We support entirely the working group result, and we hope that it will be endorsed and proposed to the General Assembly as it is. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, le Japon, pour votre soutien.
Thank you very much, Japan, for your support. Let me give the floor to the Netherlands, followed by Poland.
On your election. We also would like to thank the Secretariat and the Ambassador of Japan for all the work they put into preparing and chairing the working groups. The Netherlands appreciates the use of this open-ended method, wherein everybody has the possibility to join the discussions. I won't make a remark on the separate paragraphs. We respect the extensive work of the open-ended working group and are happy with the results. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Merci beaucoup, les pays.
Thank you very much, Netherlands. Let me give the floor to Poland, followed by Kazakhstan. Poland, Ambassador, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and good morning to everyone. Mr. Chair, congratulations on your election. And I have to say that it's a very good day for us today. We have managed to fulfill all our mandate as a working group. As the open-ended working group, and on that, in that sense, I would like to thank very much the government of Japan for its great contribution, which allow us all to work on the very important revision of the listing mechanism. I also would like to thank Secretariat and the chair of the open-ended working group himself for a brilliant and negotiating skills and his guidance that led us to finish all our discussions in a very great result. I also would like to thank the Bureau members and all the committee members and the state parties to the conventions for a brilliant discussions, very long-term negotiations, big arguments sometimes, but then at the end, a great consensus on the list of recommendations that we have in front of us today, which will enable the whole international system of the intangible cultural heritage protection to work more effectively. By saying that, I hope that our today's decision will create a new chapter in the international intangible cultural heritage protection, and we will start to implement now what we have decided to recommend to the General Assembly and try to work better together for the sake of the convention and for the sake of the protection of the intangible cultural heritage around the world. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Poland. Thank you for your support and your commitment. And through you, I would like to speak to all the members of the committee. And we can see it this morning. There is a broad consensus around recognizing the exceptional work done by this working group. I'd like to thank Ambassador Oge and the government of Japan for their financial support. It's really important, and I think that our convention, and we can see it through the discussions and the commitments made by all, that the convention is taking more importance, gaining importance here at UNESCO. And we have to look at seeing the 2003 convention gaining even more importance, and we have to ensure a better implementation. But we have taken major steps through the recommendations made by this working group, and I'd like to thank you once more. Let me give the floor now to Kazakhstan, followed by Botswana. Kazakhstan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to everybody. Dear Mr. Chairman, since this is first intervention of our delegation, let me express to Ambassador Samira Dare our sincere congratulations on your chairing. We believe that your competence and experience will safely navigate our extraordinary session caravan to reach the desired destination, inshallah. We would like also to express thanks to the government of Japan for its generous commitment in supporting the work of the open-ended Intergovernmental Working Group. And special thanks to Ambassador Atsuki Oiki-san for his patient, inspiring, and constructive manner of convening the group work, which resulted in reviewing documents. Arigato. We should also express compliments to the diligent and efficient secretariat work led by Mr. Tim Curtis. My delegation supports the proposal of Switzerland and some other delegates not to reopen the debate since the recent discussion of the committee. My delegation will express its comments for proposed recommendations and amendments in accordance with the proposed agenda and agreed procedure. I just want to make some general adding. Ladies and gentlemen, the delegate of Brazil reminded us about the coming convention anniversary. This year, Kazakhstan marks the decade of accession to the UNESCO Convention 2003. I am glad to inform you that Kazakhstan National Post Agency already issued the ordinary post stamp on this occasion to be used in most common occasion by most of population who send mail by post in Kazakhstan. And another special and picturesque postmark will mark the 20th anniversary of the Convention 2003. Thank you very much for your attention.
Merci beaucoup, le Kazakhstan.
Thank you, Kazakhstan. Let me give the floor to Botswana, followed by China. Excellency, you have the floor, followed by China.
Thank you very much, Chair. I thought by remaining silent, I would, as it would be assumed that I too support the colleagues that have spoken before me, but I thought perhaps I should also register that support and congratulate you, Chair, on your election for this extraordinary session and with the way you are conducting the meeting. I would also like to join colleagues to congratulate Ambassador of Japan for his able leadership of the open-ended working group and for the achievements that they made. And also to congratulate and thank his government for his generous support of the process. And of course, last but not least, to thank Tim and his colleagues at the Secretariat for the good work they put in and continue to put in. And we hope Chair, that we will be given the opportunity, as colleagues have already mentioned before me, for us to comment individually. I have comments, for instance, under the options, as well as the evaluation body and international assistance. And I hope that we will be given that opportunity to make those comments. Thank you very much, Chair.
Merci, Monsieur l'Ambassadeur. Évidemment, bien sûr, vous aurez l'occasion.
Thank you, Excellency. Of course, you have the possibility to intervene on the evaluation body and others if you have comments to make. China, followed by Saudi Arabia. You have the floor, Excellency.
China. It seems that there is a connection problem, or
is it Saudi Arabia's turn, Your Excellency?
Okay, China is back. Okay, the floor is yours, China.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry for the technical problem, just a little bit, the disconnection. My delegation would first of all to extend our congratulations on your election as the chair of this extraordinary session of the committee. And also we would like to thank again for the Ambassador of Japan for his excellent chairing of the working group on the reflection of the listing mechanism for all the 3 rounds of the working group meetings. And we also appreciate very much for all of the working group members for their gracious and valuable inputs, which leads to the very constructive results of the recommendations to the committee. And we would like to thank the Secretariat for their tremendous efforts in preparing for this extraordinary session and working out this document for the possible revision on the operational directives. My delegation fully appreciates all the efforts and also very much welcoming all the proposals to which will be finally presented to the 9th General Assembly next week. But before that, my delegation would like to have some points to be clarified by the Secretariat regarding to some paragraphs of the revisions, which does not mean any possible revisions to the wording, but just need some clarifications. If you may, Mr. Chair, I would like to refer to the form ICH 06 form, which used to be applied for the request for the international assistance for the best safeguarding practices. And also my question regards to the paragraph 47, which we would like to be clarified, since we are not very sure this paragraph is consistent to the recommendation by the working group, which is number 2. Recommendation number 2. So we just need some further clarifications, if you may, from the Secretariat. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Merci beaucoup, la Chine, si vous le permettez.
Thank you very much, China. I'll give the Secretariat, of course, to give you the clarifications that you wish to have. Let me now give the floor to Saudi Arabia, followed by Cameroon and Sweden. Saudi Arabia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and congratulations on your elections. We're very happy to see you today, and we're looking forward for a successful ICH committee meeting in Morocco. Dear Mr. Chair, I would like first to start by thanking the Secretariat for the diligent work that they undertook. And I would like also to thank all member states who participated wholeheartedly in this discussion. We shared a common goal and we have achieved it. And of course, most importantly, I would like to thank Japan, the government of Japan, for its very, very generous contribution and also their beautiful in-kind contribution by providing the wise, the smart, the diligent chair, the ambassador of Japan, who led this discussion very wisely and very patiently until we reached this recommendation. We call for the adoption of this recommendation as it is. It reflected effectively the discussion that took place, and hopefully all the questions can be answered so we can take it forward to the General Assembly. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Excellency, for your support. And of course, I have the same wish that you have just mentioned about the explanations that China has asked for, so we can move on without reopening the debates over the issues. The floor is given to Cameroon, who will be followed by Sweden. Cameroon.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, de me donner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving me the floor. I would like to congratulate you, Mr. Chairperson, for your election. And I would also like to use this opportunity to thank the government of Japan for its generous contribution, which has allowed for this convention to be enhanced. As you all know, the 2003 convention has a great importance for communities in our countries because it relates to questions of identity and values. And this is what communities have that is most precious, their values. We also want to thank the Secretariat for everything they've done to support the work on this convention, and we'd also like to thank the working group and its chairperson. We'd like to thank as well the members of the committee who have taken part in this open-ended working group. This open-ended aspect allows us to also be aware of the principles guiding this convention and strengthen our capacities, such as the global understanding of these orientations. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. We fully support, obviously, the work that has been done, and we hope that the clarifications from the Secretariat will only strengthen what has already been recommended and adopted collectively. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Thank you very much, Cameroon, for your support. Of course, the questions you've asked or the demands for clarification are absolutely legitimate, and the Secretariat will answer to these with great pleasure. I now hand the floor to Sweden and then Azerbaijan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and congratulations on your election. Sweden has been an active part in the reflecting process, and we would like to thank the government of Japan and especially Ambassador Ogi for successfully chairing the meetings. We would also like to commend the Secretariat for their excellent work and their very clear explanations here today. We know how much time, negotiations and considerations that lies behind these proposals, and Sweden supports the statements from the many colleagues here today asking to adopt the proposed provisions as a whole, and we look forward to the decision and also the discussions here today. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Sweden, for your support and for your kind words. I now hand the floor to Azerbaijan and then Sri Lanka. I'd just like to say that there's a hand raised by Palestine, and I will hand the floor to them after the explanations that the Secretariat will give to us through Mr. Curtis after the members of the committee have spoken. Floor to Azerbaijan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson.
First of all, I would like to, as we take the floor for the first time, I would like to congratulate you on the election and also the Bureau members. I also would like to appreciate the work done by the Secretariat, and would like to commend and congratulate Ambassador of Japan for his leadership throughout the chairing the open-ended working group, as well as the generous support of the government of Japan. And as you have mentioned, Mr. Chairperson, 2 years of hard work that we went through, and we believe that all this hard work through the constructive discussions were quite clearly reflected in the proposals. And we, in general, welcome the proposals, and we look forward to have excellent relations throughout the upcoming meeting. Thank you.
Merci infiniment.
Thank you very much, dear Ambassador, for your support. And of course, I know that, like all the other members of the committee, you were very involved in the discussions in the working group. This is indeed the result of collective work that we're presenting today, and I do hope that by the end of this session we can adopt it without too many issues. I will now hand the floor to Kuwait. Sorry, we hadn't seen the hand raised by the Ambassador of Kuwait, and then after that it'll be Sri Lanka and then Rwanda.
Ambassador, the floor is yours. Kuwait.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And sorry taking the floor again. Mr. Chair, I took the floor, the first one, when you opened the debate to discuss paragraph 22. And after hearing, from our colleague as a committee members, I think, it was positive, and they are, welcoming, and agreeing, what we have in front of us reflects, the discussion. So if you may allow me, Mr. Chair, after the clarification, that was requested by member states, after the clarification of Secretariat, and if the member states satisfied with this clarification, we adopt the whole paragraphs as a whole. So then we can move forward and, use the time, efficiently. So my suggestion is to, once the clarification was satisfied with all members, we approve it as a whole. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Merci.
Thank you very much, dear Ambassador. I know how keen you are on being efficient and constructive. Thank you very much for that. I'll hand the floor to Sri Lanka and then Rwanda.
Lanka.
Thank you very much, Chair. As Sri Lanka is taking the floor for the first time, I would like to congratulate you for your day's work. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank the government of Japan for their support, and especially the permanent delegate of Japan, Ambassador Oike, for all his hard work and steering the open-ended working group in the right direction. And also, we would like to thank the Secretariat and all the contributors who made these recommendations seen through. And Sri Lanka is looking forward for today's deliberations. Thank you very much.
Merci infiniment.
Thank you very much, Sri Lanka. And I do use the opportunity to congratulate you for the last session we went through, which was exceptional. Please be thanked for that. I hope that the 17th will be as fluid and as smooth as the 16th. Thank you very much. I hand the floor to Rwanda now.
Thank you, Chair. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair.
Excellences, chers collègues.
Excellencies, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Since it's also the first time I take the floor today, I would like to start by thanking you, congratulating you, Mr. Chairperson, for your leadership on this exceptional session of the Intergovernmental Committee for the safeguarding of intangible cultural heritage. We also congratulate the Bureau, and we wish them great success in their future mission. I thank the Secretariat and the whole working group who have taken part in the elaboration of the document presenting the recommendations within the framework of the global reflection on inscription mechanisms on the list of the convention. Thank you very much, and I'll take the floor later. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, the Ambassador, for your support. And I hand the floor to the Secretariat so that they give us some explanations and clarifications which have been asked by some member states, and then I will give the floor to Palestine. Mr. Curtis, you have the floor. Thank you, Mr. President.
I say the correct things. So I thank all the comments and all the acknowledgement of all the committee members who've spoken, and I think there were two questions which were asked by China and endorsed by some other countries, Cameroon, and indeed I can fully understand the need for some small clarification. I'll start with the first one on Form ICH 06. It really is quite simply that the Form ICH 06 now becomes Form ICH 05. So that is all the preparatory assistance requests come under one form, and this is a simplification of procedures with the view to lightening, if you will, a little bit the workload. But it is also because there's one less form, which is the standalone international assistance request, which used to be either under 100,000 or over 100,000, is now just one form under 100,000. So ICH 06 is now ICH 05. I hope that answers the question. And concerning paragraph 47, indeed, this is what I explained in the opening, and I believe the delegate of Kuwait also referenced it. When we took the recommendations, it did say that all international assistance requests were to be examined by the Bureau. And in fact, this was a slight contradiction with, for instance, a recommendation of an earlier working group, an earlier part of the working group, which requested that transfers from the representative list to the urgent safeguarding list could also be accompanied by an international assistance request. Furthermore, we have a procedure now where a submission for urgent safeguarding listing can be accompanied at the same time by an international assistance request. Now, in these cases, and this was not really discussed during the working group in any detail, but in these cases, those files are just one file. The international assistance is not taking up an extra space in the ceiling. And therefore, we considered that in order to be consistent with the recommendations of Part A or B, and I can't remember if it was A or B of the working group, we allowed for that provision for the international assistance request, those that are combined with the request to the urgent safeguarding list, or those that come in the what will be the new mechanism for transferring from the representative list to the urgent safeguarding lists. And the logic, of course, I repeat, is that they do not take up a space within the quota. That remains one file. Those, therefore, are proposed to continue to go to the evaluation body and the committee. I hope that that clarifies why that paragraph 47 is drafted the way it is, and also the issue of ICH 06. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Tim. I do hope that the explanations given will satisfy China and Cameroon. In any way, if any country wishes to take the floor, I will give them the floor. But before that, I will hand the floor to the Ambassador of Palestine. You have the floor.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, dear President, dear Chairman. Congratulations for your election as chairperson of this session. Just very quickly, I don't want to take too much time, but I just wanted to say how important this work is in order to improve the implementation of our convention. And we all know that this work has been done thanks to the generous contribution of the government of Japan, who I thank warmly.
Ambassador Oike, I can't say better words than what has been said by our colleagues. Very able leadership indeed, and very diplomat. It was a difficult task, but he brought it really to a very good end. And the proof is that all members of the committee approved the recommendation of the working group. Personally, I think this work is exemplary and is very important. And here, I would like to pay tribute to the diligence of the Secretariat, who is delivering a very, very difficult work. We forget, maybe sometimes we see them with us and we forget that they are preparing other meetings and they are preparing other cycle for the files with the evaluation body and so on. So we know how much they are efficient. Nevertheless, I have just a very small remark. I didn't want to raise it before because I was thinking about it. Still, we need to think about it. Only the appellation when we talk about exceptional cases, les cas exceptionnels. Exceptional, it includes, of course, emergency cases, but it could go beyond emergencies. So I think that we need to keep in mind using the word emergency procedure to get a little bit inspired by the 72 Convention. I don't say that we need to copy and paste the emergency procedure from 72 Convention, but just rather using the word and keeping the recommendation as it is for the moment. And as it has been said, in any case, it is a dynamic issue. In the future, we will see how these recommendations are implemented and how it contributes to the better implementation of the convention, especially regarding the mechanisms on the list. But this question of emergency procedure, I think that we need to keep it in mind for the future. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and we are looking forward to our 17th session in Rabat. Thank you so much.
Merci.
Thank you very much, dear Ambassador. And of course, first I'd like to thank you for your support, and then, of course, for participating in our reflection, especially considering the future. And you're absolutely right to raise this question, this issue of exceptional cases, emergency situations. Indeed, like we've done for the 1972 Convention, it might probably be necessary to convene a new working group in order to look at these questions efficiently, because they're very important questions. Thank you immensely, dear Ambassador. And now I hand the floor to Cameroon, who would like to take the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Cameroon would simply like to come back on a little mistake that was made. We didn't ask a question. We didn't support the question by delegates to China. We support the work that has been done, because on this subject of international assistance requests, we'd already done the send the questions to the Secretary, who had already clarified to us what was the framework in which the international assistance could be requested. So we fully support the work as it is. We just thought that we were just saying that we didn't think such clarifications should lead to another debate. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson. Thank you very much, Cameroon. And let me reassure you, we completely understood that you fully support the recommendations of the working group. Are there any other members asking for the floor? I don't think so. It doesn't seem to be. So I take it that the clarifications and explanations given by the Secretariat have been sufficient and deemed acceptable by China. Therefore, I suggest we move on straight away to the adoption of the draft decision in its entirety, I would guess, since there is broad consensus on the recommendations that are proposed. Therefore, I would ask for the draft decision to be protected on the screens 5.x.com4. And
adopt this draft decision. As shown on the screens, if there is no... Je ne vois pas de demande.
I don't see any requests for the floor. I'll give some time for the draft decision to be shown in its entirety so that members of the committee can become aware of it in its entirety. I believe we can adopt this decision as it is. It is adopted. Thank you very much.
Et je voulais en profiter.
And I wanted to take the opportunity, again with this adoption, to thank you all, each and every one of you, for this very constructive spirit you've shown, which has been very obvious throughout all the work of this working group. And again, a huge thank you to the Ambassador Oike for his leadership, his patience, for his commitment, for his diplomacy, subtle diplomacy, which has allowed us to reach this result. And also I would like to thank the Secretariat, of course, because without the Secretariat we could not have made so much progress and reached the results we have reached today. Therefore, I congratulate everyone here for this adoption. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Donc là, nous passons... Nous passons maintenant au 5.
Let us now move on to item 5 of the agenda, which is a request by Ukraine to examine the nomination of culture of Ukrainian borscht cooking. I suggest you consult document 5 LHE/22.5.ext.com/5 with more information. I would also like Tim to explain to us the context of this extreme urgency nomination.
Dear committee members, we are presented now with an item which came to us following a request by Ukraine on the 21st of April 2022 to inscribe the nomination Culture of Ukrainian Borscht Cooking on the list of intangible cultural heritage in need of urgent safeguarding as a case of extreme urgency and in reference to Article 17.3 of the 2003 Convention. The nomination dossier had originally been submitted by Ukraine using Form ICH02 in March 2021 for possible inscription on the representative list of the Intangible Cultural Heritage of Humanity. But then, due to the ongoing armed conflict, Ukraine made the request for this nomination to be treated as soon as possible and as a case of extreme urgency in reference to the provision 17.3 of the 2003 Convention. And this is indeed the first time that such a request has been treated and presented to the committee in the implementation of the Convention. So in accordance with paragraphs 1 and 32 of the operational directives, this initiated a process whereby the Bureau set out a step-by-step procedure to treat the request on an accelerated basis. Allow me to summarize, therefore, the key points briefly, as they are also reflected in the working document. On 6th of May, the Bureau met to consider the request and establish the procedure to treat it. Ukraine was subsequently invited to submit any additional information to that which had been previously provided, and in particular as regards the inscription criteria U2B and U6. The Secretariat then consolidated that additional information, which was received on the 14th and 15th of June, and compiled it into a composite nomination dossier. The main part of the nomination dossier was a letter from the Minister of Culture, as well as the newly submitted form ICH 01 corresponding to inscription requests on the list of intangible cultural heritage in need of urgent safeguarding. These forms and these dossiers are, of course, available from the web page dedicated to this extraordinary session of the committee. This nomination was evaluated then by the 2022 evaluation body during their June meeting, and in fact precisely on the 20th of June, using the same working method as other files in the 2022 cycle. The evaluation body finalized their recommendation on the 21st of June, the next day, again mainly basing it on the information that was submitted in the new form ICH 01, and this recommendation was then transferred to the Bureau for its meeting on the 23rd of June. The Bureau concluded that based on the recommendation of the evaluation body, the case indeed should be considered to constitute a case of extreme urgency in the sense of Article 17.3. The Bureau underscored the importance of bringing this request to the committee as soon as possible, as is stipulated in paragraph 32 of the operational directives. And to this end, the Bureau requested the Secretariat to initiate an electronic exchange with committee members to seek at least 2/3 of the committee members to agree to include this request in this 5th extraordinary session of the committee. And following the electronic consultation, which took place between the 23rd and the 28th of June of this year, more than 2/3 of the committee members agreed with the Bureau's proposal to bring this request to the attention of the present extraordinary session. In fact, there were no objections of any committee members. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Tim, for this clear presentation.
In accordance with our usual practice for examining nominations to the convention list, I would like to now invite the representative of the evaluation body of 2022 to present their conclusions to the committee. I believe that the rapporteur, Mr. Kirk Siang Yo from Singapore, will be starting the presentation, and his intervention will be followed by that of the chair of the body for this cycle, Mr. Luigi Petrillo from Italy. I give the floor to Mr. Kirk Siang Yo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Following the decision by the Bureau meeting on the 6th of May, the evaluation body was formally requested on the 13th of May 2022 to examine the nomination, Culture of Ukrainian Borscht Cooking, as a case of extreme urgency for the urgent safeguarding list in reference to Article 17.3 of the Convention. The request was included in the agenda of the second meeting of the 2022 evaluation body, which took place in Presencia in Paris at UNESCO HQ from 20th to 25th of June 2022. The Secretariat made the nomination dossier available online to the evaluation body through its dedicated monitoring interface on the 16th of June this year. It was explained to the evaluation body that the Secretariat had received the additional information on the nomination form from Ukraine, an additional letter on the 14th of June this year, and the form ICH 01 with photos received on 15th of June 2022. These were included as information to constitute a composite nomination dossier presented in a booklet format. The evaluation body undertook individual evaluations between the 16th and 19th of June this year and provided written evaluations through the online interface. The file was then discussed during the meeting on its first day on the 20th of June, following the same working method used for evaluating the files of the 2022 cycle. During its deliberations, the evaluation body assessed the nomination against each of the required criteria for inscription to the urgent safeguarding list, with specific consideration of inscription criteria U2B and U6 to arrive at a consensus. The draft decision was prepared overnight on the 20th of June by the rapporteur, myself, The draft was then reviewed by the evaluation body during the second day of its meeting on the 21st of June. The draft decision was finalized by the evaluation body during the same meeting and subsequently validated by the chairperson that same day. Through these exceptional efforts and under extremely tight deadlines, the evaluation body was able to complete a full evaluation of the file on an accelerated basis. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. I now pass the floor to the chairperson of the evaluation body. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kirk. Thank you, Chairperson. Ukrainian borscht is a traditional dish that is served at social events, holidays, and rituals as an expression of hospitality and inclusion. The specific ingredients vary according to the region, season, occasion, and cooking method, and the practice is based on within families, with the children participating in the preparation. Loaded in tales, folk songs, and proverbs, Ukrainian borscht is viewed as a lifestyle and identity marker, an integral part of Ukrainian heritage that reflects the country's value and beliefs. Please allow me to go through the main conclusion of our evaluation. On criteria 1, 4, 5, the evaluation body found that the nomination responded to the criteria required. The body took particular care to look at criterion U2B, and there our conclusion is that the nomination file demonstrates the various factors related to the ongoing armed conflict that threaten the viability of the element and its transmission. The displacement of people and viewers threatens the element, as people are unable not only to cook or grow local vegetables for borscht, but also to come together to practice the element, which undermines the social and cultural well-being of community. As such, the transmission of the element is also threatened. The armed conflict also destroyed the environment, fauna, and flora. Importantly, the armed conflict leads to the loss of the everyday context associated with practices the element, and thus significantly affected the holding of cultural events, in particular festivals dedicated to traditional food, including borscht. All of these factors justify the need for urgent safeguarding of the element as a case of extreme urgency. In that sense, our recommendation is that the existence of the soup itself is not under immediate threat, but that the living heritage that is associated with borscht is facing immediate threat, because people's ability to practice and transmit their intangible cultural heritage has been severely disrupted due to the armed conflict and forced displacement of communities. Related to criterion U3, the evaluation body considers that safeguarding plan proposed is extensive and coherent, but it's necessary to monitor the implementation considering the current state of crisis. The body therefore recommends that the state party revise the safeguarding plan according to the ever-evolving context of the armed conflict, and then report back to the committee in 2023. Criterion U6 focus on the necessary consultation with the state party regarding the description of the element in conformity with Article 7.3 of the Convention. The request came from the state party of Ukraine, which submitted that additional information following the request by the Bureau of the Committee. The evaluation body considers that the nomination meets criterion U6. Finally, the evaluation body recognized that the culture of borscht cooking is shared also with other communities in the region, and included the reference to this in its recommendation. In conclusion, the evaluation body recommends that culture of Ukrainian borscht cooking be inscribed on the list of intangible cultural heritage in need of urgent safeguarding as a case of extreme urgency, as stipulated in Article 17.3 of the Convention. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson.
Merci, thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Je voudrais, au nom du comité,
In the name of the committee, I would like to thank the evaluation body, including its chair and its rapporteur, for all the exceptional work that has been done in order to evaluate Ukraine's request in such a short time. I now give the floor to the members of the committee. I see that the Czech Republic is asking for the floor, followed by Switzerland. Czech Republic, you have the floor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our delegation appreciates the presentation of this nomination under an extreme urgency procedure for the list of heritage in need of urgent safeguarding. Thank you for this speedy and comprehensive examination. Thank you for the very effective interaction between the State Party, the Secretariat, and the evaluation body for this first opportunity of using Article 17.3 of the Convention. We are very aware of the difficulty of the situation Ukraine finds itself in since February. We're very happy to be able to support this inclusion on the list of intangible cultural heritage, especially in such an urgent situation. The nomination file is very well designed. The additional information is perfectly clear. It has been evaluated by the experts as a case of extreme urgency and justified it as such. Its recommendation to inscribe it is positive. All criteria are met, and the process for using Article 17.3 was implemented very transparently ever since the beginning of the procedure. For all these reasons, our delegation would like to support the inscription of this element. We hope that after this inscription, it will be possible to start implementing some of the safeguarding measures very speedily. We consider this nomination as a very example of the use of Article 17.3 of the Convention for extreme urgency cases. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Czech Republic. I give the floor to Switzerland. Ambassador, you have the floor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With this nomination of the culture of Ukrainian borscht cooking on the list of intangible cultural heritage in need of urgent safeguarding as a case of extreme urgency, Article 17.3 of the Convention is being used, and it's the very first time in the history of our Convention that it is coming into use. In general, in fact, Switzerland would like to recall how important intangible cultural heritage is and how essential it is to safeguard it, especially in cases of extreme urgency. Our Convention has provisions and directives that enable us to live up to the need to protect living heritage when it is in danger, when it is under threat. Of course, I would like to state today that the Bureau and the Secretariat have implemented the procedure as planned for extreme urgency, and that this procedure was based on best cooperation with the State Party requesting, on the expertise of the evaluation body, and on transparency with all members, state parties. We would therefore like to congratulate the Secretariat and the evaluation body for having been so very reactive in the processing of this request. In passing, I would also like to thank the evaluation body and both experts that supported us and presented us with additional information this morning. The evaluation body has formulated a positive recommendation based on the analysis of the composite nomination file. It believes that the file meets all the criteria and the practice and transmission of the inscription based on the expertise performed. I would also like to reiterate the recommendations of the evaluation body to the requesting state. Please adapt and review the safeguarding plan, taking into consideration the changing context. We understand that the circumstances are extremely difficult, yet we believe that it is essential for the requesting state to be able to implement a safeguarding plan and report on it to the committee. Only in this way will we be able to monitor this first example of safeguarding an element of intangible heritage in a case of extreme urgency. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much, Ambassador.
From the Republic of Korea, to be followed by Poland. Korea, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to congratulate you for taking the chair of this important extraordinary session of this committee. Our delegation would like to appreciate Secretariat and the evaluation body for their efficient work done in timely manner during the whole reviewing process of this item. Considering the current dire situation in Ukraine, our delegation would like to recognize the extreme urgency of this Ukrainian tradition of borscht cooking under the article of 17.3 of the convention, and therefore support the inscription of the culture of Ukrainian borscht cooking. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Korea. The floor to Poland. Poland, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, Poland wishes, first of all, thank the Ukrainian delegation for presenting this file for the urgent safeguarding. We truly believe that the tradition of borscht cooking is indeed endangered and demands from us urgent and timely action to preserve and monitor what is going on with the element regarding the situation in the ground. Poland wishes also to commend the Secretariat and thank the evaluation body for their work and providing the committee with all the arguments and all their work that they have been presenting to us when it comes to the assessment of the nomination. I don't want to repeat all the arguments that have been raised by my colleagues, but I wanted to underline that we fully support the draft decision presented to the committee, and we hope that this decision will be adopted. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Merci beaucoup, Madame.
Thank you very much, Madam Ambassador. And now Brazil, you have the floor, followed by Cameroon. Brazil, you have the floor.
Brazil would like to commend the Secretariat and the Bureau for the agile and professional manner in which it brought this topic to the discussion of the committee. We know that flexibility is one of the greatest assets of this convention. And in this regard, we believe that the new operational directives will bring even more accuracy and actuality for the benefit of our state parties. We would also like to congratulate the government of Ukraine for the very professional and detailed report. We particularly note that the report values the role of communities in line with the convention's text. If the 1972 World Heritage Convention is very much dedicated to states, the 2002 Convention is more oriented to societies. And it's very interesting to note how the two conventions complement each other to protect our heritage. In this sense, Ukraine's accurate and extensive report deserves Brazil's full support once it highlights an element of intangible culture that is extremely important for social cohesion of Ukrainian communities. We are impressed to learn how borscht soup historically supported and united Ukrainian communities in difficult periods such as the Civil War, the Holodomor, and World War II. We are also glad to note the efforts of the Ukrainian government to safeguard this national symbol of resilience. Brazil believes that the description of the borscht cooking in the urgent safeguarding list will be an important contributor to these already ongoing efforts. Mr. Chair, among the millions of immigrants that Brazil was privileged to welcome in the 19th century, there is a significant Ukrainian community. There are, for example, in the Brazilian state of Paraná, communities that have more than 80% of their inhabitants of Ukrainian origin. In these communities, you can appreciate a bit of Ukrainian culture and even get a taste of the borscht soup. To conclude, I would like to recall a very famous sentence from the French philosopher Jean-Pierre Savarin, published in the 19th century in his Physiology of Taste. Tell me what you eat and I will tell who you are. The motto is more current than ever. Food traditions of a territory have created the identification of cultures emerged there. Despite the irresistible process of globalization, cases as the Haitian Jumu soup and Ukrainian borscht soup demonstrate that culinary traditions are in the core of cultural identities. And you can keep counting on Brazil to preserve the tastes, flavors, and culinary knowledge of the world. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, Brazil. Now, Cameroon, you have the floor, followed by the Netherlands. Cameroon, you have the floor. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for giving me the floor. Cameroon would like to thank Ukraine for proposing this element for urgent safeguarding. We would also like to commend the Secretariat, the Committee Bureau, and the evaluation body with regard to the efficiency, technicity, and speed in which they managed to prepare this nomination to be examined today. We'd also like to highlight the importance of this element when it comes to the moral values, the identity values of this element. This is indeed something that brings communities together and is part of their identity, and so it is in line with the mandate of our convention. It is also in line with our procedures and under Article 17.3. Cameroon would thus like to truly support including this element on the list. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Cameroon.
To the Netherlands. Netherlands, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We thank the Secretariat for preparing this document. The Netherlands has always encouraged member states to make use of the opportunity of the urgent safeguarding list. The document shows that all the steps of the procedure are followed correctly, and we truly thank the evaluation body for their hard work. We highly respect the advice of the evaluation body and therefore support the inscription of the culture of Ukrainian borscht cooking. We recognize the urgent situation and hope this decision will be adopted. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Netherlands. I have two more requests for the floor. One, Panama, to be followed by Japan. Panama tiene la palabra.
Thank you very much, Chair. Being this our first time, we would like to congratulate you for your election and for your job today. Our country believes that the procedure that has been done has all of the requisites of the convention, and we considered that the evaluation group has done a great job with the recommendations, which we are in accordance for the inscription of the soup in accordance with Article 17.3 of this convention. In the center of all of this, we need to consider that there are ethical principles that we need to take into consideration. These focus on the need to respect and recognize practices needed for the safeguarding of our ICH. Therefore, the delegation of Panama supports the inscription of the Ukrainian borscht as established by our convention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Panama. Now I give the floor to Japan. Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I would like to thank the Secretariat for its efficient and hard work. And secondly, I would like to thank the evaluation body for the hard work and good results. It seems that there is a consensus for the adoption of the draft decision as it is, and nobody spoke against it. And on that basis, we would be very happy to say that we want to add our voice to the support of this particular inscription. Thank you very much.
Merci.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I'm happy to see you back on screen so quickly. I see no other requests to take the floor, and so we can immediately move on to adopting the draft decision. I suggest we adopt it as a whole, unless the members of the committee would like to work through it paragraph by paragraph. But I think there is a large consensus, and so we can immediately proceed to adopting the whole of the decision. Can the Secretariat please show the draft decision on screen? This is decision 5.ext.com5. And if you could very slowly scroll down through it so that the committee members can have an overall view of it.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Secretariat. So now turning towards the members of the committee, can we adopt this decision as a whole? I don't see any requests to take the floor, and so I can consider that decision 5ext.com5 is adopted.
Félicitations à l'Ukraine.
Congratulations, Ukraine. Now I'd like to give the floor for 2 minutes. Or longer, is what the Secretary is saying to me, to Mr. Alexander Lukashenko, the Minister of Culture and Information Policy. You have the floor. Thank you very much.
And distinguished members of Intergovernmental Committee, state parties and participants of 16th session of Intergovernmental Committee for the safeguarding of the intangible cultural heritage. On behalf of Ukraine, and especially on behalf of Ukrainian people, I would like to express my sincere gratitude for supporting and inscription the element of the culture of Ukrainian borscht cooking in the list of intangible cultural heritage in need of urgent safeguarding. Without exaggeration, this is a significant event for Ukraine today, especially today. Despite all social and humanitarian stress caused by the full-scale war on the territory of Ukraine, many Ukrainian families will eat borscht for lunch today. In destroyed cities, in frontline, in other countries that kindly sheltered Ukrainians, with meat, fish, or just vegetables from own garden, Ukrainian borscht is a single gastronomic symbol and a marker of our national identity. The culture of Ukrainian borscht cooking is not only an element of the intangible cultural heritage of Ukraine, but the way of living. Therefore, Ukrainian borscht and the culture of cooking contribute to strong social and dialogical interaction among all social groups of Ukrainian society. We're talking about traditions because the cooking of the main dish of our country and love for it unites people, and at the same time emphasizing the uniqueness of each region and each Ukrainian family. Food always unites people, especially good food. And there is a connection between food and tradition and memory. Ukrainian borscht is a mandatory element of Ukrainian ritual culture, both happy events and mourning. However, now we want the borscht to continue to be associated with wonderful Ukrainian traditions, not with famine and war. The full-scale war in Ukraine completely changes not only our understanding of the world in which we lived, but also our attitude to values and traditions. The understanding that we can lose them and any moment forces us to take even more seriously the safeguarding of our intangible cultural heritage. All the Ukrainians have united unprecedentedly to preserve all our Ukrainian, which means freedom, territory, and culture. The state, together with the barrier communities, will continue to make every effort to ensure that this element develops so that the threats to its existence finally disappear. But inclusion of the culture of Ukrainian borscht cooking to UNESCO list will present the importance of safeguarding Ukrainian traditions for the world, and we hope to stop Russian aggression even on culinary front as well. Let me thank you once again for your high trust on behalf of the bearers of the element, for whom your assessment are a reward for their big efforts. We believe it is a victory of culture and will continue to be committed for the ideals preserving culture heritage around the world. Thank you very much for your attention and thank you for this decision.
Thank you, Minister, and once again, congratulations on behalf of all the committee members. I think that we have now a little film over the borscht.
We have collected over 40 borscht recipes. The dish has 5 main ingredients: potatoes, red beets, carrots, cabbage, and onions. At first, water in a pan is put the vegetables, and then each housewife application can be different, and so the taste too. At the national level, the element is recognized as a part of culture, as the culture of cooking borscht is perceived as a part of the national heritage. This is the first time in the Ukrainian history of submitting an element to the national list, when all Ukrainian elements is included, not a regional one. That's why the culture of Ukrainian borscht cooking unites the whole country. The carriers in which we recorded the elements have a direct connection with a specific element. They are carriers of regional features and tradition of Ukrainian borscht cooking, and also consider it is a part of their heritage. Represent historical recipe, feature and regional traditions of Ukrainian borscht cooking in their region. In addition, our history is connected with this element. Borscht is our identity.
Merci. Merci.
Thank you very much. I'd like to speak for the members of the committee. We should congratulate ourselves because it's the first time that we've used this procedure of extreme urgency under Article 17.3. And I'd like to once again congratulate Ukraine for this nomination and this inscription. I will now move on to the closing of our session. I'd like to thank you because we were very efficient today. and everything went well. So thank you very much, members of the committee. We're reaching the end of a very a very productive half day of work. I'd like to commend you all for your spirit of cooperation, which allowed us to take important decisions today for the future of our convention. Your strong commitment and your show of goodwill in working together in the spirit of consensus made my work as chair very gratifying, and I'm very grateful to you. Over 220 people coming from 85 different countries signed up to take part in this extraordinary session of the committee. This shows once again how important our work is for the different states and other stakeholders of the convention. Allow me to highlight the important contribution of this committee to the reform of the inscription mechanisms on the convention lists by providing revisions to the operational directives, which recommend the recommendations made by the Intergovernmental Working Group, the open-ended working group. This session allowed us to prepare in the best way possible the work of the General Assembly, which will mark the closure of the very fruitful reflection that was launched since 2018. Another very important achievement during this session is the decision that we have just taken to allow the culture and preparation of Ukrainian borscht to be inscribed on the urgent safeguarding list as a case of extreme urgency. This unprecedented application of Article 17.3 of the Convention shows once again the capacity that our Convention and its governing bodies have to adapt and to react in emergency situations. It's only been 3 months since we received Ukraine's request on the 21st of April 2022. Finally, I'd also like to express my gratitude to the to Mr. Necho Otone, the ADG for Culture, and to Mr. Tim Curtis as well, their whole team, which have done wonderful work and which allowed us to reach our goals today. Thanks to their constant devotion, Tim and his team have allowed this meeting to be held in the best possible conditions and as quickly as possible, allowing us to meet Ukraine's request in record time, and also to allow the General Assembly that will meet in a couple of days to be able to examine all the results that were reached by the Intergovernmental Working Group on the listing mechanisms. Thank you once again. Before closing this session, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Otone, the ADG for Culture, and to Mr. Culture to say a few words. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chairperson. As you know, this extraordinary session fulfilled one of the key functions assigned to the committee by the Article 7E of the Convention, the preparation of operational directive to be approved by the General Assembly. Thanks to the decision taken today on the basis of the significant work carried out by experts and the open-ended intergovernmental working group since last year, the General Assembly will be able, in a few days, to examine an entire set of revision of the operational directives, which will conclude the reform and improve the implementation of the listing mechanism for states and for the communities. The extraordinary session was an important step towards achieving the reform of the Convention listing mechanism. Allow me to commend one more time the significant achievement made by the Convention. Through the committee decision today, the inscription of an element of the urgent safeguarding list on an accelerated basis is a landmark in the history of the Convention, giving a concrete realization to the operational principles and modalities for the safeguarding of intangible cultural heritage in emergencies adopted in 2020. Echoing the words of the chairperson, it is UNESCO's wish that this inscription will highlight the role that living heritage can play for the physical and physiological resilience of communities affected by armed conflict. My sincere thanks, of course, go to you, Mr. Chairperson, as always, for the excellent leadership you demonstrated throughout this morning. This has been a very constructive session, in large part thanks to the admirable way you handled the debate in this online format that is not always so cute to see. We also owe, of course, a tremendous thanks to all the committee members, in particular for the spirit of dialogue demonstrated not only today, but also in the past 4 years, since this is the last time that the committee in its current composition is meeting. In a few days, 12 members will complete their mandate. Let me take this opportunity to express our appreciation to all of them for their unerring engagement towards the safeguarding of living heritage and the international, at the international level. Well, I look forward to seeing many of you in person, I hope. Use the mask at the General Assembly of the Convention on Tuesday. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairperson, and I wish also to thank the whole team of Team and Fumiko, who do a tremendous work that is really a pleasure to work with all of them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. ADG, for the kind words. And I would like, before closing this session, to ask if there is any request for the floor from the committee members. I see none. That means everybody is happy with the work done. Anyway, je voudrais
before closing this session, I would like to thank you all. Thank you to the ADG. Thank you to Tim and to his team for their wonderful work. Thank you to the members of the committee. And as the ADG said, there was a constructive, positive mindset, and you were efficient also. And as the ADG said, I would like to take advantage of this opportunity to congratulate the outgoing members of the committee. They've done an extraordinary work during their mandate, and they made it possible to move ahead in the implementation of the 2003 Convention. And as I said earlier on, there is more and more interest in this convention, and we're very pleased with that. I hope that we will meet soon for the General Assembly, and I'm also hoping to see you very soon in Rabat, in Morocco, for the 17th session of the committee, which will take place from the 28th of November to 3rd December 2022. And I hope that we will be up to the task so that your stay is as pleasant as possible. You know the well-known hospitality of Morocco. It doesn't mean that we're not going to work. Of course, we will work, and we'll have to be really efficient given the agenda awaiting us. So I declare this session closed, and thank you again to all of you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, everyone. See you Tuesday.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone.
Merci, le Président. Au revoir.
Goodbye. Thank you, Mr. President.